Welcome to Withdraw Consent. I'm Jack. So today I had recently I've had some interesting insight on the development of the Talmud, and I want to pitch this idea to you it's kind of new, and Victor and I were developing it. But basically, Victor keeps looking at the story of King David in the Bible. It's in First and Second Samuel, and there's a consistent behavior that King David is just an absolute piece of trash, right? And basically, so I had mentioned it before, but basically he's living in one kingdom with his band, right? And his band will go out and find a village of the locals that's not part of the kingdom that he's in. And then they'll kill a man, woman, and child because number one, God had commanded it. And number two, because they didn't want to leave any witnesses to tell them that it was King David doing it. He's not the king at this time. He's basically a murderous bandit, right? And so I'm talking worse than Muhammad. He's worse, And so then you go to another story where King Saul is dead, and a guy who says he's an Amalekite comes and says, hey, I've got the king's armor. I killed him. And then David just murders the messenger because he's like, I don't trust you. So he's going to murder that messenger who brought him the king's armor and stuff like that. And then you could go on to the story of Bathsheba, and then he's lusting after this woman because he sees her bathing. And then, he commits adultery with her. And then he's like, and so Uriah is the husband, Uriah the Hittite. And he's like, well, I can't go back. I got to stay with my men because he's completely loyal and just a good guy in the story, So then King David has him put out to the front of the battlefield and then has the troops withdraw so that he gets murdered and then murders him, And Victor was like, man, Uriah was like a really good dude, And the reason why he was a really good dude is because he was a Hittite. He was not an Israelite. He had values and morals and stuff like that, right? And so basically, I was talking to Victor about this, and I said, "Oh, he didn't care about Uriah because he was a goy." And then Victor's like, "No. They hadn't started all that Talmud stuff yet. This was way before Babylon, the Babylonian captivity, right?" And then it just dawned on me all of a sudden, and I realized, wait a second. Sure, they didn't have the Talmud yet, right? But the Talmud was oral and then written later, because it wanted to reinforce the values that these terrible human beings already had. So normally when you have a religion, the religion sets a bar above you that you've got to work towards, right? You could think about it in Christianity, it's easy, but you could think about it in Islam too, because like Muhammad said, you should do the prayers 50 times a day. But because you're weak and pathetic, I'll make the rule that you only have to do it 5 times a day, but you should be doing it 50, because even the 5 is a high bar. And so he's setting this bar. You look in Buddhism, you're trying to eliminate desire. So to do that, you got to get rid of attachment. It's intense, right? But all of these religions, they got this high bar that you have to reach. But the Talmud doesn't have a high bar. What it has is an extremely low bar that validates all of the things that they were already doing, right? And the interesting thing about that, though, is that the Talmud is just trying to keep these terrible people from doing the terrible things to each other. And so if you think about it, this is why in the Talmud says, yeah, pedophilia is to go, right? 3 years in a day, it is nothing, right? Under 9 years old, it is nothing. Go for it. But not to our own people, please, right? Just to the goy, right? So basically, you end up in this situation, and this is my revelation, is that the Talmud was the vindication for the character of the people that already existed before the Talmud was created, right? So this is the character of King David, which is just complete filth, just a complete scumbag, right? And so the Talmud was later validation for the Jewish character that pre-existed. And so the funny thing is they're just trying to keep it away from themselves. Like, go do the pedophilia thing, just don't do it among your fellow Jews, right? Don't do the the child trafficking, which they're famous for doing all over the world at all times in history, but just not to our own people. So it's interesting because you end up in a situation where, like, I was thinking about it and I'm like, the advantage to being a Jew, right, is that you're in the safest position from your children being sex trafficked. The disadvantage of having children, though, as a Jew, is that your children are most likely to be the traffickers because it's permitted, And that was my wife's insight, was the latter, that about the disadvantage, because she's like, then your children will grow up to do the thing, And so I think this is interesting, because it's not like it was a good, righteous, moral people who then created a Talmud that said, hey, you can do all these terrible things. It was a terrible people, and they were validating their own behavior. They weren't creating a bar above them. They were placing the bar where they're at. You know what would be the easiest thing? Just to make up a religion right now and to just say, hey, all the things that I do that are terrible are godly. You know what I mean? Say you beat your wife, say you cheat on her, say you're just terrible, and those are the rules. It's okay to do those things. And that's what the Talmud is. And so that's my insight. I thought it was interesting. It's a different look at it, because when you're looking at the Talmud, always you're looking at something so foreign and unconscionable to anybody with just, even if you're not that moral, it's unconscionable, all the things in it. And so you're always trying to figure out the psychology behind it. Like, why would you pick these things and this and that? And in my opinion, the psychology behind it is that they want to validate behaviors that they already have. What do you think about this idea? Do you agree or disagree? You got other insight on it? I'm interested in knowing, because I'm still developing this idea. I'm not pitching it that it's 100% complete, but I think it's a pretty good place to start on the psychology behind the Talmud. Anyways, that's what I got for you. Hope you had a great Christmas yesterday. Hope you have a great weekend to come. See you next week.